Hello everybody, this is another little video tutorial. Really, this will be a more technical one, and I think probably many of you don't need to watch this, but I have a couple of colleagues here with me that are quite technical and that have a good knowledge of programming. So this is for them. I just want to help them understand how these different tools are working in combination with the Bible Online Learner, or at least how I personally am using these tools with regard to the Bible Online Learner. So let me quickly illustrate you why I am not just using the Bible Online Learner for creating exercises. So if you create an exercise, and we have just used the example of first Guttural and first Aleph verbs, if you are using the Bible Online Learner to create such an exercise, here's our dummy exercise, let's edit it. And let's create this exercise again. Let's clear this here. We said we want to have verbal class, and there we only want to have first guttural and none of the other verbal forms, right? So if we do that, or let's do it more simple. Let's just do regular verbs, right? Imagine this is a Hebrew 1 course, you only want to have regular verbs. You can say, yes, I want regular verbs and I don't want these regular verbs to be connected with any other verbal class. I think actually this is, I'm now overbuilding, because if it's a regular verb, then it is also not a third aleph and a third hey and a penun and so on. But anyway, so just to show you the logic behind this, so we can say we only want regular forms, yes, and we want no other verbal form to be colliding, so to say, with your regular form. Okay, so let's save this and let's start our exercise. So now, as you start your exercise, you will, I think, quickly discover something, namely that you have an overrepresentation of third singular masculine forms. Obviously, here we have a second singular masculine form, that's fine. So check answer, show answer. So second masculine single form in katal, obviously it's a he field. So next. Now we have a first person form, great. Well, now we have again now we have a third masculine form, and well, now we have a participle masculine singular. Now we have a third masculine singular. You see where this is going. We will usually get masculine singular and most of the time a third person. Why is that? Because the query we wrote looks into the entire BHS, and then samples, or not samples, but puts together the a random order of the democratic representation of forms. And if you do a democratic representation of forms, obviously most forms in the Old Testament are third singular masculine forms. So of 10 forms, you probably get 50% of forms that are third singular masculine forms. That's probably not something that you want. Perhaps you also want to have the second singular feminine forms, which are very infrequent in the Hebrew Bible, but you want to learn them, the morphology, the paradigms, and for that, the democratic representation of forms are not always the most helpful. It will obviously appear, but not in the ratios that you would like. So what I like to do with my students is I want to get a fair, or not a fair, but a well sampled data file that actually has as many third singular masculine forms as it has second singular feminine forms, and of course all other variations. How do I do this? Well, obviously I'm not able to achieve this by using the Bible Online Learner Exercise Builder. I cannot create samples. The only thing that I can do is I can decide the order of questions, that they're either random or fixed. When it's fixed, it means that we start in the book of Genesis, in Genesis 1:1. That's the first verb that will be shown, and then the second verb will be shown in the next verse, or perhaps the same verse. But it goes basically from Genesis 1 all the way down to 2 Chronicles. Well, if you do random order, at that moment, it could pick, a form from Psalms, and the next form is Job, and the next form is Genesis, and the next form is 2 Chronicles. So the randomness is with regard to the location in the Tanakh, in the BHS, but it is not affecting the distribution of the nature of the morphology. So you will have significantly more third singular masculine forms than you have any other form. In order to bypass that, I need to go somewhere else. I'm using the text fabric environment to produce these samplings. What I do is, here you see kind of my notebook in which I produce these exercises. I first obviously load the BHS version into text fabric with modules that resemble the features that we have in the Bible Online Learner. These were all created by me and are then nicely implemented with the ETCPC data that you also find in Shibunk. Yeah? So I load the data, and then what I do next is I'm going to, because this would, let's say I'm building morphology exercises, what I do first is I run a query in which I'm looking for any word in the BHS, and I want all the data or the features available for words that are important when I create vocab exercises, morphology exercises, any word-based exercise. So here you see all the features that I'm looking for too. So for example, lex would mean please add all the each lexeme per word. Or for example, give me the dictionary number that is attached to any word that will allow me later to filter, for example, in alphabetic order, my word lists. Or occurrence number, yeah? The occurrence, how often does that word appear in the Tanakh? Or, for example, where do I have it here? Whether ketif kere is present. Why do I want this? Because most likely I want to remove all the ketif kere issues of my data set so that students see actually the only forms that are proper vowelized. So I'm running here a query. So as a result, I'm exporting the text fabric query results, and then I'm importing them as a pandas data frame into my Jupyter notebook. And here now I have each word, right, as it appears in the BHS, Bereshit bara Elohim et, and so on. This is just the first lines, and you see that with each verb I get all the features that I was looking for in my text fabric query. I have the word order, I have the occurrence information. Bereshit appears 15,541 times, Reshit appears 51 times, and so on and so on and so on. I have the monad numbers. That's something that I'm very keen of getting because it allows me to here's the monad number 1, 2, 3, 4, the first word, the second word, the third word, because that allows me to match it with the Bible Online Learner. Anyway, okay, so once I have created the word list, I can now create any word-based exercise that I'm interested in, for example, morphology. So I now load my pandas data frame and do some cleanup. There are a couple of verbal forms that are probably difficult, particularly for Hebrew 1 students, that I want to get out. For example, emphatic imperative, right, where you have an imperative form with a common say at the end. Some people confuse it then with the katal form. So heva, for example, that's heva is not a third singular masculine form, but it's actually a second singular masculine form of yahav, but the common say ending is found with some emphatic imperative form. So I'm making sure that I'm taking these forms out of my equation. Or think about, I want to make sure I have classified HIT-PL forms where I have transposition or metathesis, so I calculate them and add them as a data feature to my data frame. So you see there's a lot of qualitative work that I'm doing, where, for example, here Vaiktol forms, first-person vehicle forms that have a comments hey ending, looks like a coordinative form, but it's a vehicle form. So those ones I also want to add to my data frame so that at a later stage I can actually exclude them from exercises. Okay, so I'm doing all these cleanup forms, clean up procedures, and then really when I'm done with that, I can actually now create or export a very good database. Now, as what now happens is once I've reduced all complicated forms or forms that might create issues for students, the next step really is that I sample my data. So what does sampling mean? You have the sample function in Pandas that allow you to define what categories you want to sample around. So for example, I want to have a good distribution of person forms. So I want to have as many third person forms as I want second person forms as I want first person forms. Then I want as many feminine forms as I want masculine forms. I want as many singular forms as I want plural forms. Verbal stem, I want as many cow forms as I want he, feel, and PL and whatever forms. So here I have the classifications that I want to use for the sampling procedure. So once I have identified the classifications, then I say, please sample. In this case, I give the sampling number, I determine the sampling number to be 3, which means of each possible verbal form, when it comes to person, number, gender, and so on, I want 3 representations. So I will have 3 third singular masculine forms, 3 second singular feminine forms, and so on, in combination with verbal tenses and with verbal classes and with pronominal suffixes and so on. So I sample that, and then I want to sort the data, of course, according to the monad numbers so that everything is nicely organized. What I then also do is, and that's not something that is necessary, but I always like to also remove duplicates. It will somehow affect negatively here you have the removing of duplicates. It will affect, of course, the democratic, it will increase the democratic value of the exercises, which is something you might not want. But yeah, I usually drop the duplicates. And then I export the data. Here let me see, I just do some exercise, some graphs to make sure that everything is well distributed in my database, and then export the data. Once I've exported the data, then we are entering into the next stage, namely we now, let me open the Explorer. We are now going and opening our exported file that we just created. So here, this is the exported file. And as I have it open, you can now see that this is the database that we just generated. I now nicely have a representation of each morphological possibility. And here are my monad numbers. Each word has a monad number which determines the position in the BHS, and these monad numbers are identical with the database that the Bible Online Learner is using. So now I just need to export these numbers into my exercise. So what I will be doing is, let's go back here to the Bible Online Learner. So let's choose the exercise that we were playing with here. This was the exercise. Now, let's clear everything. So we can now import all these monad numbers into our exercise. If you want to have a full description of this process and want to read it, not just listen here to this recording or this video, you can have a look actually on the GitHub side of the Bible Online Learner into issues. where I'm suggesting to add a function into the Bible Online Learner where you don't have to do everything that I'm explaining now, but where this can be automatized for a user who can select the sampling. But anyway, so here it's nicely explained. You can just read it and continue from there. But let's go back here to our exercise. So what I am doing now, let's say we only want to have regular verbal forms. Let's keep it simple. We can go verbal class and say only want regular verbal forms. So now you see the MQL query says verb class has to be regular. And now I can manipulate this MQL query. I need to do some handwriting now. I can say and monad number. Monad num has monad num in. So, and I can now add the numbers that we just generated here. Here you see all the monad numbers. I can take them, copy them, open Visual Studio. Here we go. Here's our Visual Studio. I can copy paste them in. So now I have all these monad numbers that we just generated. They are in here. Let's delete here this one. Okay, so now we have all the monad numbers. Of course, we want to have a comma there so that the MQL query runs. Now we have a comma here, just a simple replacing function. Then now we can copy paste this out. I've now copy pasted 6,266 forms. And we will add them here. So now we are looking for any regular form that is to be found in this pool of monad numbers. And just to remind you, this pool of monad numbers is qualified by the fact that we have a beautiful sampling. That means each form is represented 3 times. Each morphological possible form is represented 3 times. So now we just copy paste this because we want to make sure this is also in the sentence units. MQL query. Let's put this in here. Since the sentence type is already Word, we need to take this bracket off and we need to get this information off too. Okay, good. So now we have a perfect regular exercise. Let's do save. Let's call this regular. Okay. Now let's refresh. We should have the regular exercise here. Excellent. Good. Here we go. And there was an error somewhere close to the syntax. So let's fix this. Edit somewhere. Must be an error. And monad number in, I think I probably miss a closing bracket. Yes, I think this should do it. Let's go there here as well. You know, we had 2 opening brackets, so we need 2 closing brackets. So now we add the closing bracket. Let's see. This should be working now. Save, yes. And now we go to run this again. Perfect. Here we go. And so what we now have is a perfectly sampled exercise for regular forms. You see here a second masculine plural form. Then our next form is with suffix, right? We have a suffix form. We have again a suffix form with a different suffix, again a suffix form, then again, right? Then we have a nice cohortative form. We have a wide distribution of different types of forms that are now present. So this is a way how you can further improve the quality of your exercises. It's quite a workaround, but once you have settled your database of perfectly sampled forms like this, you are good to go. You don't have to do really anything else anymore. But again, this was a tutorial just for the ones who are a little bit more into the technical aspects of this of exercise creation and want to look under the hood as well. I hope that was helpful. Thank you. See you. Bye bye.